Most people think Sigma males are silent because they're cold or antisocial or disconnected from the world. But that's not the truth. A Sigma male is silent because he understands something most people never will. The more you explain yourself, the weaker your position becomes. This video is about the Sigma male who stops explaining, stops justifying, and stops asking to be understood. Not because he's arrogant, but because he's aligned. Because a Sigma male doesn't need approval to move forward. He doesn't need validation to stand firm. And he doesn't need permission to live by his own code. In Stoic philosophy, this kind of man is dangerous, not to others, but to the systems that rely on insecurity. Today, we're breaking down why the Sigma male chooses silence, how he uses it as power, and what happens when he no longer tries to be understood. If you've ever felt stronger when you said less, this video is for you. There is a quiet moment in life when you realize something unsettling. The more you explain yourself, the smaller you begin to feel. Not because your reasons are weak, but because you're placing your worth in hands that were never meant to hold it. Most people don't notice when this shift happens. It's subtle, almost polite. You start explaining your choices, then your boundaries, then your silence, then who you are, and slowly, without realizing it, you trade inner authority for external approval. The Stoics warned us about this long ago. They said, if you are disturbed by something external, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your judgment about it. And nothing reveals that judgment faster than the need to be understood, because the moment you feel compelled to explain yourself, you've already assumed someone else has the right to evaluate your life. This is where the Sigma path quietly begins. Not in rebellion, not in dominance, not in noise, but in withdrawal, a conscious step back from the endless need to justify, defend, and perform. The Sigma doesn't shout his identity into the room. He doesn't negotiate his values, and he certainly doesn't beg to be interpreted correctly. He understands a simple Stoic truth. Your life is not a courtroom, and you are not on trial. When you stop explaining yourself, something strange happens. People lean in, not because you said more, but because you said less. Confusion replaces control. Curiosity replaces entitlement, and silence begins to do the work that words never could. The Stoics believed that the strongest position a person can hold is inner alignment, when your actions match your values. No explanation is required when your identity is stable. Opinions lose their weight. This is not emotional coldness. This is clarity. This is what happens when you stop living to be understood and start living to be centered. And once you experience that shift, you never go back, because silence, when chosen deliberately, is not weakness, it is power, with nothing left to prove. And this is where most people make their first mistake. They think silence means distance. They think explanation means connection. But the Stoics saw it differently. They understood that the more you try to justify your life, the more you invite others to sit in judgment over it. Explaining yourself feels harmless at first, even noble. You tell yourself you're just being clear, just being fair. just helping people understand your intentions. But clarity quietly turns into permission. Permission for others to question your choices. Permission to debate your boundaries. Permission to reinterpret who you are through their own fears, expectations, and insecurities. This is the trap, because explanation is rarely received as information. It's received as an opening. Once you explain yourself once, people expect it again and again until silence feels like disobedience. The Stoics warned that when you seek approval, you surrender autonomy. They believed that a person who lives according to reason does not need to convince the crowd. Because the crowd does not live with the consequences, most explanations are not asked for. They are extracted, pulled out of you by discomfort, by tension in the room, by the fear of being misunderstood. But here's the uncomfortable truth. People who genuinely want to understand you don't demand explanations. They observe, they listen, they wait. It is only those who want control, who insist on clarity on their terms. This is why the Sigma learns early to distinguish between clarifying and justifying. Clarifying is calm. It is brief. It stands upright. Justifying is emotional. It over-explains. It leans forward, hoping to be accepted. The Stoics taught that inner peace depends on knowing what is yours to manage and what is not. Your intentions are yours. Your values are yours. Your direction is yours. Other people's understanding is not. And when you try to manage it, you exhaust yourself. You start rehearsing conversations in your head, explaining things that haven't even been questioned yet, preparing defenses for choices that are already aligned. This is how people drift away from their center, not through big failures, but through small, repeated compromises. Each explanation pulls you slightly outward. Each justification moves your attention away from your own compass and towards someone else's approval. The Sigma notices this pattern and quietly opts out. Not with arrogance, not with hostility, but with restraint. He understands a Stoic principle that most people overlook. What needs constant explanation was never solid to begin with. When your values are clear, your behavior doesn't wobble. When your direction is firm, your silence speaks accurately. This is why the Sigma begins to say less. Not because he has nothing to say, but because he refuses to dilute meaning through excess words. And the moment he stops explaining himself, something important happens. The power dynamic shifts, but that shift, and why it unsettles people so deeply, is something we need to look at next. That moment, the moment you stop explaining yourself, is where the balance quietly changes. Not on the surface, not dramatically, but underneath. Because when you stop explaining, people lose something they were unconsciously using. Leverage. Most social power doesn't come from dominance. It comes from access to your reasons, your doubts, your emotional investment. Every explanation you offer is a thread someone can pull. They may not even realize they're doing it, but once they're used to you clarifying, defending, softening, they begin to expect it. So when it disappears, the absence feels unsettling. This is why silence makes people uncomfortable, not because it's rude, but because it removes their reference point. They no longer know how to position themselves above you, around you, or inside your decisions. The Stoics understood this dynamic well. They taught that true power lies in self-command, not in controlling others, but in refusing to be controlled emotionally. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop reacting. And reaction is where power leaks out. Reaction says, "Your opinion has authority over my peace." Silence says, "My life is not a negotiation." This is where the Sigma's presence begins to feel heavier. Without him doing anything at all, he doesn't argue. He doesn't correct misconceptions. He doesn't rush to be seen accurately. He lets misunderstanding exist, and that's what shifts the room. Because most people rely on feedback loops. They poke, they question, they provoke. They expect a response to calibrate their influence, but when nothing comes back, they're forced to confront something rare, a person who does not need them to feel stable. This is not emotional distance. This is emotional independence, and it disrupts unspoken hierarchies. People sense it immediately, even if they can't articulate it. They feel less entitled to your time, less entitled to your explanations, less entitled to your inner world. The Stoics believed that the only thing truly under your control is your judgment, and the Sigma guards it fiercely, not by attacking others' opinions, but by refusing to organize his life around them. When you stop explaining yourself, you also stop over-investing. You no longer rush to close every gap in understanding. You let people sit with uncertainty, and uncertainty is powerful. It forces observation. It forces reflection. It reveals intention. Those who were only curious will adjust. Those who were seeking control will grow frustrated. This is how clarity separates people without confrontation. The Sigma doesn't announce boundaries. He embodies them, and embodiment is harder to challenge than words. But this raises a deeper question. If silence changes the dynamics so completely, how does the Sigma know when to adapt and when to remain unmoved? Because silence alone is not enough. And that's where we need to go next. But silence alone is not wisdom. Because silence without awareness can turn into rigidity, and rigidity is not strength. It's fear disguised as principle. This is where many people misunderstand the Sigma. They assume that once he stops explaining himself, he becomes distant, stubborn, unmoving. But the truth is more precise. The Sigma is not inflexible. He is selective. He understands a Stoic distinction that most people never learn to make. Adapting to the world is not the same as surrendering to it. The Sigma adapts constantly. He reads the room. He studies the environment. He notices power dynamics, emotional undercurrents, unspoken rules. But he does not internalize them. He adjusts his behavior, not his identity. This is why he often appears effortless in different settings. In one room, he blends in another, he fades into the background. In a third, he steps forward briefly, then disappears again, not because he lacks direction, but because he knows exactly what matters and what doesn't. The Stoics taught that external roles are costumes, useful, but temporary. What defines a person is not how loudly they assert themselves, but how consistently they act according to their inner code. The Sigma pays this price willingly. He wears what makes life easier. He speaks the language that reduces friction. He follows the surface rules without mistaking them for truth. This is not deception. It is efficiency. And efficiency is often mistaken for weakness by those who need constant validation. The Sigma understands something subtle. Not every battle deserves resistance. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Not every moment deserves your full self. Adaptability allows him to move through systems without becoming owned by them. He chooses tranquility over recognition, progress over applause, freedom over being seen as special. The Stoics believed that the greatest threat to inner peace is unnecessary friction, so the Sigma avoids it. Not because he is passive, but because he is disciplined. He knows when to speak, when to shift, when to comply outwardly, so that he can remain sovereign inwardly. This balance between flexibility and integrity is what keeps him centered. But it also creates a strange effect. People often feel unsure where they stand with him because he is present, but not entangled, engaged, but not invested in approval. And that ambiguity is intentional. It protects his inner world. Yet there is one more layer that completes this picture. Because adaptation without silence is noise, and silence without restraint is coldness. So the Sigma learns one final discipline, one that defines his presence more than anything else. And it begins not with action, but with knowing when not to speak. Because adaptability without silence creates noise, and silence without intention creates distance, the Sigma understands that silence is not the absence of words, it is the presence of control. Most people speak to relieve tension, they talk to fill space. They explain to calm their own anxiety. The Sigma does the opposite. He uses silence to observe tension, to measure intention, to reveal character. The Stoics believed that the tongue is the most difficult muscle to discipline and the most dangerous when left unchecked. Every unnecessary word gives away position. Every emotional explanation exposes leverage. This is why the Sigma chooses restraint. He does not rush to respond. He does not interrupt uncertainty. He allows conversations to breathe, and in that space, truth surfaces. Silence forces others to show their hand. Some fill it with insecurity, some with dominance, some with nervous justifications, and some with honesty. This is how the Sigma learns who he is dealing with, without asking a single question. When he remains quiet, people reveal whether they are curious or controlling, whether they are grounded or threatened by independence. The Stoics taught that attention is energy. Where you place it is where you give power. By speaking less, the Sigma places his attention inward, on alignment, not reaction. He does not argue to be right. He does not correct to feel superior. He does not explain to be understood. He speaks only when words can move something forward. Clarity, direction, resolution, everything else is excess. This is why his words feel heavier when he finally chooses to speak, because they arrive after observation, after discernment, after restraint. Silence sharpens judgment, and judgment, for the Stoics, was the seat of freedom. But silence alone is not the end, because when you consistently speak less, something else begins to happen. You stop needing to be liked. You stop needing to be approved. You stop needing permission to be who you already are. And that final shift, the release from approval, is where the Sigma becomes truly untouchable. That is where we go next, because when you speak less, something unexpected happens. You begin to notice how much of human behavior is driven by the need to be liked. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Most people shape their words, their tone, even their values around acceptance. They soften truths. They delay boundaries. They agree when they don't believe, just to keep the room comfortable. The Sigma steps out of this loop, not because he is cold, not because he lacks empathy, but because he understands a Stoic truth that few people are willing to face. If your peace depends on approval, it is not peace at all. It is dependency. The Stoics warned against this attachment. They taught that the desire to be liked makes a person negotiable, and a negotiable person can be moved away from himself inch by inch. The Sigma refuses this trade. He accepts that clarity often creates distance, that boundaries often offend, that silence is sometimes misunderstood as arrogance, and he lets it happen because being liked is not the same as being respected, and respect cannot be chased. It emerges naturally. When someone is rooted in self-command, the Sigma does not try to manage perceptions. He does not correct every misunderstanding. He does not perform kindness to earn safety. He allows others to have their reactions. Approval is not his currency. Integrity is. This is why some people feel unsettled around him. They can't read him easily. They can't manipulate him with praise or disapproval. They can't pull him back into alignment with guilt or expectation. The Stoics believed that freedom begins when you no longer need to be admired, because admiration is volatile. It rises quickly and disappears just as fast. But self-respect endures. The Sigma chooses the slower reward. He would rather be misunderstood than misaligned, rather be alone than surrounded by people who require him to shrink. And in making this choice consistently, he gains something rare: stability, a grounded presence that doesn't shift based on who enters the room. But there is still one discipline left, because not needing approval is powerful, yet power without direction can turn inward. So the Sigma learns to choose discomfort deliberately before regret chooses for him. And that final discipline is where everything comes full circle. Because once you stop needing approval, you are faced with a quieter but harder choice: comfort or character. Most people choose comfort first. They delay the difficult conversation. They avoid the lonely decision. They stay where it feels familiar, even when it feels wrong. The Sigma does the opposite. He understands something the Stoics repeated relentlessly: short-term comfort often becomes long-term regret. So he trains himself to choose discomfort early. He says no before resentment builds. He walks away before self-respect erodes. He endures temporary isolation instead of permanent misalignment. This is not recklessness. It is foresight. The Stoics believed that a disciplined life feels heavy at the beginning and light at the end. An undisciplined life feels light at the beginning and unbearable later. The Sigma chooses the heavier start. He accepts that growth will cost him ease, applause, and sometimes people. But he also knows what it gives him in return: clarity, consistency, a life that does not require explanation. This is why the Sigma appears calm. In situations that break others, he has already paid the price, quietly, deliberately, in advance. He did not wait for life to force him into change. He chose it, and over time, that choice compounds, not into dominance, not into status, but into something far rarer: inner authority. The kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't seek permission, the kind that stands firm even when no one is watching. This is not a personality type. It is a discipline, a way of moving through the world without losing yourself inside it. If this video felt quiet, not empty, but steady, then it likely touched something you already sensed but hadn't named yet. This channel isn't about becoming louder, more dominant, or more admired. It's about becoming centered. If you're walking that path, you're not alone. Thank you, truly, for spending your time here, for listening with intention, and for choosing depth in a noisy world. If this message resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel, not for notifications, not for numbers, but so we can continue these conversations slowly, honestly, and without performance. Your presence here matters.